You're listening to the OCD Stories podcast, hosted by me, Stuart Ralph. The OCD Stories is a podcast dedicated to raising awareness and understanding around obsessive-compulsive symptoms. I do this through interviewing inspired therapists, psychologists, and people who have experienced OCD. Welcome to the OCD Stories. And welcome to episode 399, and in this one I got on Logan, who has kindly agreed to share his OCD story with us. And in particular, we discuss relationship OCD, ADHD, therapy, how boredom played into the OCD, acceptance and commitment therapy, and much more. And thank you to NoCD for supporting the podcast. NoCD offers effective and convenient therapy available in the US and outside the US. To find out more about NoCD, their therapy plans, if they currently take your insurance, or to download their free app, head to go.treatmyocd.com/the OCD stories, or the link will be in the episode description. Thank you to all of our patrons for supporting our work. To sign up to our Patreon and to check out the other benefits you'll receive as a patron, please see the link in the show notes. So thank you to you guys for listening. As always, it means a lot. And thank you to Logan for sharing his story. And without further ado, here he is. Welcome to the podcast, Logan.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you on, and I'm looking forward to hearing your story. So you can share it now in as little or as much detail as you want to give.
Okay, yeah, sure. So I live in Kansas City, Missouri. I've lived here my whole life. I've got a pretty big family. Family's always been a pretty big thing. Growing up, so I have three sisters, two older and one younger. My oldest sister is pretty meticulous, kind of the typical older child. And her and my dad kind of have similar personalities. I didn't even really know what OCD was until kind of early 20s. And even then it was just kind of the stereotypical flipping light switches, hand washing. It was probably about 2 years ago that it was first kind of proposed to me that I might have OCD, and I pretty much just brushed it off. But being in therapy and kind of thinking back on some of the things that were, I think, relevant to me as a kid, made it all click. But yeah, as a kid, my kind of earliest memories of feeling like I had some obsessive tendencies is I would have panic attacks from like a pretty young age about the idea of eternity, which I've talked to some other people who've experienced that as well. But for me, it was just like I would be sitting in class and I would just be like kind of spaced out and think about this idea of like forever, like, and it was usually in a religious context. Yeah, it would always just like, I would just kind of feel my heart race, and I would usually just like raise my hand and be like, can I go to the bathroom? And I would just kind of go and have a moment where I was just kind of doubled over a little bit, or, hands pressed into my eyes or whatever. And then we kind of go away and I'd go back to class and be fine. But yeah, I did grow up in a pretty, religious setting, and my dad was the pastor of my church growing up. And I always, like, my family has always been very close. And I think me and my sisters heard a lot growing up about, how great our parents were, and, just that they did everything right and we were super lucky. And we absolutely were. Like, I still to this day, like, my parents are my favorite people. But I think we all kind of like learned this thing where we had to be that good, or we had to kind of live up to that. And I think all of us developed like this sense of like a pathological fear of like getting in trouble. So I remember anytime I would get in trouble as a kid, I would, kind of have the same like panicky response. And yeah, I think I just learned some strong tendencies of like avoidance, and just like bargaining, like, as a way of getting out of trouble. I also have ADHD, And so I think as a kid, just being generally less, attention or maybe just oriented in like a very structured mindset, um, was a was maybe difficult, in not trying to compare myself to my sisters. And so, I think into my early adulthood, being in therapy, I started to gain this understanding of that a little bit more. And every time I think I experienced like an emotional problem or something, my brain just wanted to process it in this way where I could like figure it out or like know exactly what was happening, like in an obsessive manner. Um, but I don't think I would have had any like glaring obsessional tendencies that I would have been aware of until I was um, in my, I would guess, second serious relationship in my adulthood. I had a girlfriend when I was in high school that we all told dated for about 14 months off and on. And we probably broke up 4 or 5 times. And it was usually this pattern of me, like, I think we dated for a month and then I would just get this idea that I wasn't happy enough. And then we would break up and then I would miss her and then we would get back together. But every time there would be like a reason why it happened and why, it wasn't my fault or something, or how it was my fault, but here's how I can fix it. And so that relationship ended my sophomore year of college, or sorry, my freshman year of college. And then I have been in a serious relationship since I was 20, and we are together now. Um, and I want to say it's less than 10 times that we have broken up and gotten back together. But I'm not confident about that. And the first time, she was the person who originally had proposed to me that this might be OCD. And like I said, it was probably a couple of years before I was diagnosed. But when I did actually like accept it, it was, we had broken up, and this time was for good. Because I was just, I think, really exhausted of dealing with the cycle of just doubting so extremely, and then my mind changed, and now realizing, oh, it's gonna work out now. This was the problem, but now I can fix it. Um, and so we had been broken up for maybe 7 months, and we started talking again, and we were back together, but kind of talking about getting back together. And my mindset going in was talking about the therapy that we'd done and how I think I have a better understanding of what's going on. And I think of a lot of the things that clicked that made sense were very much indicative of OCD symptoms, even though at this point I still didn't have a good understanding of what that was. I remember having a conversation with my sister, telling her, like, I think I get really, really uncomfortable when I am feeling something that I think I shouldn't be feeling. And that later kind of, when I was reading this article that my girlfriend sent me upon breaking up again, that was titled Relationship OCD. I like thought it was a joke at first. Like I was like, did you write this like to get in my head or something? Like I didn't really think that. But it was just like so accurate to what I had experienced in terms of just doubting, like, is this good enough? Do I like this person enough? Do I love this person enough? Just like pretty much everything it listed, ranging from partner doubt to just relationship doubt to, am I even, the type of person who can be in a relationship? Like, do I have, like, is there something wrong with me that this just won't work out? And so, that was like such a, I don't know, just such a weird moment where I think I felt extremely hopeful, because I thought for the first time, like, wow, this really makes sense. Because I did a lot of reassurance seeking, all throughout our relationship, talking to other people, like, do you ever feel this way in a relationship? Or, this is what's going on. What do you think that means? And a lot of times, like, the answer I would get would be something like, yeah, I mean, like, relationships, like, that's just kind of how it is. Like, it's gonna probably just feel pretty boring at times, or, kind of like in a way that I think was trying to set me at ease, or be like, you're not too different, don't worry about it. But for me, what I heard was like, oh man, like, this is just how it is to be in a relationship, like constant fear of, being miserable, and, all this self-doubt. And so, yeah, I think I think the one thing I'd wished I had changed, or I could have changed in hindsight, was just not asking so many people, because I think it put just such a strong emphasis on looking for external, yeah, affirmation, rather than just, trusting that I would figure it out. Um, but I really didn't have that sense that I could figure it out, or that I had the skills to do it. It was like I was playing a constant game of, like, choose your own adventure, and I kept choosing the wrong one or something. And in hindsight, I could always find 3 or 4 reasons why I had made that mistake, and how I'm now kind of paying for that. Yeah. So that kind of brought me to this new chapter of like, okay, well, how do I deal with this now? Like, if I do have OCD, and I really think this is affecting my life, well, yeah, how do I change that? And just feeling grateful that I had the opportunity to. So yeah, I started seeing an OCD therapist. I started listening to the podcast a lot. Um, One of the first episodes I listened to that I think also just really, yeah, maybe solidified that this was it for me was, I think you pronounce it Chad Lejeune. Is that how you pronounce his
Yeah.
name?
Yeah.
Yeah, the author of Pure OOCD. Um, and yeah, just hearing some of the things he talked about, just like really clicked for me. I think he touches on that episode about this idea of, when you're thinking about past experiences and mistakes you've made, it almost, yeah, puts your brain into like this fight or flight mode. And I think for me, that would really play out as kind of this mechanism of, I had to understand what mistakes I made and why I made them, and then fix that going forward. And so I think it was just this internal fixation on like having to categorize things, not only as like problematic or helpful, but also just like morally good or morally bad. Um, yeah, morality had always been a big thing for me, and I think, a lot of themes of like, yeah, questioning, am I a good person or not? And I think there was just a lot of interplay between that and the relationship that caused more doubt. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think once I started OCD therapy, and then just learning more, I think kind of a little trap I would fall into, or can still fall into, is like, in my brain, I thought like I had to solve like OCD before I could, yeah, maybe accept it or move forward. Again, it was kind of the having to categorize and figure it out before just like applying it. And so in therapy, I would try to apply it and work through it, and think about, okay, what are the things I'm doing that I think are maybe causing me to suffer more, and then so how can I take those things and then like eliminate them? So it was still for me about choosing to do the right thing. But it was like, oh, but I have more tools to do that now. And I think kind of the turning point for me was realizing that there isn't like there isn't a right choice and a wrong choice. It's just about, your mindset. Like, how can I approach this and be psychologically flexible in a way that, yes, I can handle this. Maybe it comes with this set of painful emotions, but ultimately, like, if I am choosing what I think is really best for me, then I can trust that that's enough, and be willing to make mistakes, or, handle discomfort and pain. And I think, yeah, the pain intolerance, the doubt intolerance, I think a real avoidance of vulnerability were all kind of obstacles, or red flags, like alerting, like, this thing is off limits. Like, you can't feel this thing. If this happens, then, this is true, and that will be really detrimental. And so, yeah, that was kind of a lot of how the relationship OCD stuff played out, which I think I would cite as like maybe the most debilitating, or yeah, maybe just the most practically inhibiting, mechanism going on for me. Yeah, so maybe that's a good starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that. That's really interesting. And I like what you said just there about, um, this is what I chose to do, or this is my plan, and it doesn't really matter what comes up, thoughts, feelings, uncomfortable experiences. This is what I said I would do, so I'm going to do it. That kind of living by your values, even in the presence of these unwanted emotions and thoughts. That obviously will come along with OCD and relationship OCD, because I imagine you're with your girlfriend and you'd suddenly get anxious and doubting, and it would try and, I guess, shake you off your game plan, your strategy for getting better. Is there anything you can say about that? About how maybe in those moments you stayed focused, even though part of your brain was telling you, run, leave, this is the wrong relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. No, for me, I think there is a strong tendency to slide back into this dichotomy of like, okay, is this what I'm supposed to be doing, or is this not what I'm supposed to be doing? And so even if I'm not consciously imagining that, it's like my brain is constantly scanning for, am I happy enough? Is she checking these boxes for me? Is basically just, is this the right thing? Should I be doing this or not? And I think one of the moments that made it really helpful in dealing with those, or reframing how I wanted to respond to those feelings, was just this idea that like I can choose to grow in this discomfort, and trust that that will be beneficial for me, and not have to figure out or have 100% certainty if this is going to work out exactly how I want it to. Which for me was just shifting the focus of, I know that literally I can never be 100% happy, and obviously that's not realistic. That's not how we work as humans. But I think it was just the importance of noting that, like, okay, if I am struggling or if I am experiencing something that feels unbearable, I have the choice to, mentally compulse or ruminate. And maybe that would give me a shred of insight on, what I wanted to do. But I think historically I can trust that there's a lot of evidence that that doesn't really get me anywhere and is extremely uncomfortable. So instead, do I want to try and be okay with this discomfort, or know that there's not a format for what a relationship has to look like? I think making room for the discomfort and the pain was almost a relief, because I didn't enjoy, like, and I mean, who does, but it's not like I enjoyed this cycle of, oh, well, now I'm doubting that I want to be with you. And so that means that the other option, I'll be happier. So that's great. But it wasn't like that. It was just this sense of, oh man, like I'm going to really hurt her. It would just trigger, like, as soon as I would experience some doubt, like all the implications of that would come flooding in. Like, okay, this either means that I'm going to go forward in this relationship unhappy, or I'm going to break up with her and really hurt her feelings and really experience a lot of pain of that breakup myself. And so it's like, there's no winning. I can remember a conversation we were having where we were talking about breaking up, and I just felt like there is absolutely no way that this will work out. Like, both options are so terrible. Like, breaking up and losing this person sounds extremely painful. And I also know that I'm really unhappy right now, or feel unhappy, or have all these, like, really unsettled thoughts and feelings. And so I just don't know what to do. And so I think a lot of going through treatment was extremely helpful because it was reshifting that to like, well, really, either way, I'm gonna be fine. Maybe it like I love this person a lot and I've spent a lot of my life with them and I know I want to be with them. But even if I couldn't, like my life would still work out. I would still be fine. So I think it just kind of lowered the stakes or it lowered, maybe the expectation of like, oh, the outcome is just going to be totally disastrous if I don't nail it here.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. I think you nailed the experience of relationship OCD of I don't want to be with you right now, but I don't want to be without you either. So it's
Yeah,
kind of you're trapped in between those two awful options.
yeah,
Um, yeah.
yeah. I
Okay.
remember being really confused by that kind of conundrum. Like, so then what is the right answer? Like, if both sound horrible, like, what do I do?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Therapy.
yeah. I think that ended up being the answer, which worked out.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good. And you, you said there you were doubting, is this right? The relationship, is it wrong? Was that the main sort of doubt within relationship OCD for you, or did it ever latch on to like appearance and stuff like that?
There was never really an appearance thing as much. Like I never really struggled with, am I attracted to you anymore? Because I always thought she was beautiful. I think what would become difficult is whenever I would be obsessing on, oh, this isn't the right relationship. Like I totally messed up. Like here's what went wrong. Um, and then I would be thinking of like, okay, well, what's the right answer? Like, what do I do? Do I still want to be dating? Am I just with the wrong person? Am I not wanting to be in a relationship at all? Um, and so I think just being, and I don't know if I chalk this up to like just my personality or maybe some ADHD tendencies, but needing like this, I guess this impulse to be like more highly stimulated than I am at a time. If we would be in a stretch of like, oh, this is boring or whatever, I would almost like that would almost feel intolerable, that boredom.
Hmm.
Because it just to me it signaled something is wrong. I shouldn't be feeling bored. Like if this is my if this is the person that I love more than anybody, like why why am I feeling this way? Something, must not be right here. And so then I would definitely have this impulse for needing like something novel or new or exciting
Hmm.
as a way to kind of, distract from that pain. And so I think there would be times where I wanted to date around or I wanted to start something new, because that felt like I would be happier doing that than I am now. Um, but yeah, there wasn't really a fixation on looks or anything or wanting her appearance to be different or anything, which I am thankful for. I know they say every theme is just as painful as another, but I
Hmm.
know that that would be especially hurtful for a partner to hear. So yeah,
Yeah, okay, thank you. And it's interesting there how you said your experience of ADHD impacted the symptoms of OCD, and it makes sense. Kind of seeking that novelty, that dopamine hit. Um,
yeah.
yeah. Um, do you think ADHD affected both negatively and or positively therapy at all?
Yeah, wow, that's a really interesting question. I do actually see some possible positives because whenever I did learn about OCD, and I started listening to the podcast and reading a few different books, and doing therapy, I was extremely motivated, um, to, just get started and like start feeling better, I guess. Like my therapist recommended The Happiness Trap by Russ Harris, which I know is talked about on the podcast. And that was just extremely helpful and just like giving some practical tools of how to, deal with some of these, painful themes. So yeah, I think it was helpful in just like being a strong motivator. And I think I was just I was so interested in all of it and just how, yeah, the mind works.
Mm.
So, little side note, my dad went back to school as a therapist the same time I started college. So he's been doing that for a few years now. And so we'll talk a lot about, different therapy models, and IFS has been kind of one of his favorite modalities that he'll adapt, and we'll talk about that a lot. And there's even, I feel like, a lot of overlap between some IFS treatment and ACT stuff. Like in IFS, I think it's called blending. One of them is called blending and one of them is called fusion, and I can't remember which is which. But speak on these similar concepts of feeling like your sense of self is really blended with maybe this tendency or this defense mechanism. And so I think having some background knowledge and just some of the stuff I talked about with my dad gave me maybe more context or help some things click a little more. And so, yeah, I think then understanding kind of the interplay between some of these ADHD symptoms and OCD felt really helpful, especially in terms of just understanding, like if I would have, this maybe natural aversion or intolerance for boredom, or just lack of stimulation, that would then like signal to this OCD part that was saying, oh no, this is really bad. Like we cannot be feeling this way. And so rather than, just being like, well, I'm bored, I guess this is what I'll do about it. It was like, why am I bored right now? What does this mean? It would just be, yeah, looking for meaning in it. Which I think was another really helpful thing of doing therapy, just learning to not take meaning so literally with feelings. Because, yeah, feelings and thoughts are, I think, information and can be helpful, but yeah, are obviously not literal. Me feeling bored when I'm with my girlfriend doesn't mean that, I don't want to be in this relationship. It might just mean let's go watch a show. Let's go,
Yeah.
So that's obviously a little above the maybe interpretation of my mind whenever I'm in this panicky state.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a good insight. So in your therapy, did you mainly do acceptance and commitment therapy, or did you do ERP as well?
I think I would say, and I've thought about this too, which is interesting. I want to say at least the work I was doing outside of therapy and just with my reading, I feel like ACE or ACT was maybe a bigger thing for me. I think most of the exposures felt maybe slightly more abstract, or maybe not abstract, but just not like, if you have an aversion to like seafood and you're like, well, I'm going to start eating seafood now. Like that feels more concrete. For me, it felt harder to like force exposures, just because I felt like I didn't have control of like how I could make something come up. I think it was harder for me to get into a mindset of like, okay, now imagine this. I don't know, maybe my thinking was like too, maybe not like practical or structured enough that I could just get into the mindset of being in like an obsessive state. So I would say ACT was probably more what we focused on, but we did do some good, I think, exposures for boredom and tolerance, like going on walks without my phone, or I think I have a tendency for like, I don't know, is there a category, a name for an obsessive theme of just like FOMO or fear of missing out? I don't know if that's a thing, but
Probably, but
okay,
I
yeah.
don't know.
But I definitely experienced like a lot of intolerance for like if I didn't have plans and I wanted to, or even if I didn't want to, I just had this impulse like I need to maximize my time somehow. Like I'm out of town a lot for clinical for the graduate program I'm in. So if I would be in town, I'd be like, oh, I need to like go do something fun tonight. And maybe I actually just wanted to stay home and watch TV, but there was almost this like insistence that I needed to do something more memorable or more fun or more stimulating, which would be exhausting because maybe I really did just want to stay home and read or clean or whatever it would be. So I think some of the exposures that we would work on for that was, okay, well, next time just stay home, like sit on the couch. Don't try not to make plans. And so that started out as pretty uncomfortable. And then get a lot more tolerable. Or the same thing with going on walks or doing whatever, just like, challenging the thought like, will it really make me like happier, enhance my life in any way if I give into this compulsion? Um, I think that was the most practical way that we would utilize ERP.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. But ACT has been quite clearly influential on your recovery, it sounds like.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely has been. And I think the biggest thing has just been shifting the perspective of, is this something that's happening to me, or do I still have, the choice? Another big episode from your podcast that was really helpful, was one of Michael Green, or that is, am I getting that right? What is it?
Yeah, Dr. Michael Greenberg.
Yeah. One of his episodes that makes me laugh a lot too, is that, rumination is a compulsion, and the importance of agency, is shifting the perspective from, maybe I'm here in this situation dealing with these difficult things because of, stuff that's in the past that I may have contributed to, or maybe I didn't. But what can I do about it now? And just the importance of like, I think that clicked for me because not only was it like, okay, this is my responsibility, or it will be my actions that kind of get me out of here. It was also like, it kind of, maybe removed the belief that like, there is, that there isn't anything I can do about it. Or it kind of also, I think, minimized this idea for me that like, there is a right way and a wrong way. It's just, no, I'm going to choose whatever I will do, and then that will have certain consequences, and I get to decide if I'm okay with that or not. Like, I get to be the one to decide if I am happy with that or not. I think that really set in for me. Probably, I think this was in May, a few months ago, and I was really fixated or trying to decide if something was obsessive or not, or something was like a compulsion or not, and if I was dealing with it the right way, and like kind of working myself up or getting anxious about this idea of like, okay, is this a compulsion? Do I need to, can I do this? Can I not? And then kind of letting go of the feeling of like, well, I guess I'm not going to do this perfectly. Like I might, like there might be times where what I'm doing might be a little bit more on the compulsive side, or it might be obsessive. I don't know, but I don't have to get it perfectly. And actually, I think for me, trying to figure out 100% of the time what is, this obsessive thought pattern and what is like values based is probably going to, take more of my time than will be worth. So it was almost just like this acceptance of I'm not always going to do this perfect, and I don't have to, and that's okay. That's actually maybe good. To be able to be like, oh yeah, I didn't nail that, and I'm still okay. I think the theme that kind of that went along with that was like, okay, if something's happening that's uncomfortable, like, can I accept that? And maybe I couldn't. Maybe it felt like, no, I can't. This sucks. And it's like, okay, but can I be okay that I can't accept it? And it was like kind of trying to get to the point where it's like, all right, I am okay with this, because I know that I can't do anything to magically make these thoughts or feelings go away. But if I can at a point just be fine with them, then I think that's good enough, or good enough for now.
Yeah, brilliant way of saying it and putting it. I mean, it's the hardest thing, right? Is making space and accepting the presence of these thoughts and feelings. But there's nothing really we can do in the short term to deal with it. And obviously, the more we struggle, the more they stick around. And it's learning that when we just make peace with it, eventually it will go. But it's that it's like allowing yourself to get slapped around the face. No one wants that to happen, but if it happens and that's gonna make it all go away, you would do it. So it's similar, right? It feels like losing, making space for these thoughts and feelings, but actually that's how you win.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you were just saying, I think reminded me of, um, yeah, just this concept that I also think was really helpful or important in healing, which is just like when there would be a spike of anxiety or something, there would be the initial discomfort of the feeling of maybe I'm sad about something, maybe I'm missing out about whatever it is, and then this strong impulse to want to fix it or make it go away. Um, and that would bring up like a secondary pain or a secondary anxiety, which is just like this need to get rid of it. And so I think going through and just learning like, oh, I don't need to make this go away. Like, I don't have a moral responsibility to be the best I can be or whatever. Like, I am the only one who gets to decide like if I'm okay with this or not. And so I think just, yeah, maybe unburdening part of that responsibility was helpful in just learning, yeah, just to kind of, yeah, I don't know, diminish some of that anxiety or responsibility to be better or to not be feeling whatever I was feeling.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And where would you say you're at now in like your recovery?
Yeah. So it's been about 8 months since I had started. And I think when I first was kind of getting going, I think I probably had some of the typical like, is this really OCD? Like, you know, I don't struggle in this way that other people do. But I think pretty quickly it came to this point where it was like, maybe I don't. I think I do. I think there's a lot. I think it makes sense for a lot of reasons that I do. But regardless, I think this treatment is like really helping me. And so I think that's kind of good enough. Um, and then, yeah, I think it's just been slowly making steps from there. Yeah, I still have like some, I think, triggering thoughts or feelings, or I'll still have kind of the alarm system go up from time to time saying like, are you happy enough? Are you doing this good enough? But I think it does feel pretty reassuring to be able to kind of reorient that and just be like, well, there's nobody looking over my shoulder making sure, that I'm happy enough or that I'm doing something good enough. So as long as I'm able to kind of comfort myself or yeah, be compassionate with myself when I feel doubt or fear, then there's no reason that I, am doing anything wrong or that, I can't deal with this. So yeah, I've been back together with, yeah, my girlfriend, of like 6 years now, off and on. And I think when those doubts come up, I think yeah, I think I'll have moments of like fear, like, oh, what does this mean? But I think the biggest difference is that now I feel a lot more confident in my ability to be like, oh, I don't have to be 100% happy right now. I can be okay with where the relationship is. And that will often like bring this like sense of relief or this happiness or gratitude. Um, yeah. So I would say right now I feel just so much better, and yeah, I'm still reading and doing a lot. And yeah, I think pretty motivated to, yeah, keep implementing, yeah, like themes of ACT and yeah, implement it into my life and how I deal with emotions and feelings going forward. So yeah, I think it feels pretty optimistic.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
And words of hope for anyone listening. What would you tell them?
Yeah, I think that I think that we just have so much more control of our lives than maybe it feels at times. I think it's really easy to get trapped in a mindset of, oh, this shouldn't be going this way or whatever it is. I know something that caused a lot of difficulty in my relationship with my girlfriend was that I would get fixated on this idea that I didn't feel the right way. And so if she would want affirmation or something, I felt like it was morally irresponsible for me to affirm her or do anything to improve the relationship. Because if I believed it might not be working out, then that would mean I was going to hurt her more when we did break up. And so it was all just this convoluted way of basically feeling like I didn't have any control, like I wasn't able to shape the relationship. I was basically having to submit to my really abstract interpretation of the future. And so, yeah, I think it's really difficult to be in a spot that you don't want to be and you don't know how to get out of. Um, and yeah, and that sucks, and that is genuinely really painful. But I think as long as you're willing to keep trying and have the perspective that, you know, this might be really uncomfortable, this might come with a lot of pain, but you can always, yeah, keep trying to do better. You're not, I guess you're not a captive of your current moment, or your current circumstances. Like, things can always change even when they feel like they won't. And I know that's generic and that everybody's probably heard that 100 times. But yeah, I think until you do experience something different, yeah, it's going to be hard to kind of see the other side.
True. Yeah, nice one. And you pick up the phone and call your 20-year-old self. What'd you tell him?
Yeah. At 20, I was kind of in between, those two relationships. And I think I would just tell myself that to try and let go of like the expectations of what life needs to look like or how you need to feel. I also had a lot of trouble with, emotional vulnerability at that time, that I think worked through a bit more before starting OCD treatment. So I think I would just try and, yeah, convey some sense of like, it's okay, whatever you feel. Yeah, there's no right or wrong way to feel. Your perspective is just as valid as anybody else's. You can trust yourself more than you do. I think that would have felt good to hear.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then you got a billboard in Kansas. What do you want written on that billboard?
Yeah. I think one thing that was helpful for me during this process was, just the knowledge that if you could do better, you would. So maybe I would get that on the billboard. If you knew how to do better, you would. Not as a means of saying you don't know how to do better, so you won't. But just as a way of, giving yourself a break, or, just an acknowledgement that, we are doing our best and whatever that looks like for us and how we're trying to survive. And so, yeah, I think everybody probably needs to give themselves more of a break.
Yeah, completely agree. And then lastly, anything else you wish you could have said or shared today?
No, I mean, I think there's probably a million other things, on this topic. But yeah, no, I think that highlighted a lot of the important parts for me. Yeah, I guess I just want to say thank you for, yeah, all the resources that you make available, through your podcast. I love the, wealth of knowledge. So yeah, I really appreciate what you do. It was great talking with you today.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your kind words, and obviously thank you for listening and taking action, and obviously sharing your story now. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's podcast, and thank you to our Patreons who helped make this episode possible. And if you would like to find out more about Patreon and the rewards and benefits, then there will be a link in the episode description. If you enjoy the OCD Stories podcast and would like to support us with a one-time tip/donation, please go to theocdstories.com/support. All tips, no matter how large or small, are greatly appreciated. Please subscribe and rate the show wherever you listen to the podcast. And thank you to NoCD for supporting our work. And if you want to find out more about NoCD, head to go.treatmyocd.com/theOCD stories or click the link in the episode description. And quick disclaimer, guys, this podcast is not therapy. It is not a replacement for therapy. Please seek treatment from a trained professional. And until we speak, take care.